Hey everyone! Sometimes you just don't want to shell out a bunch of money for a brand new flagship or even a mid-ranger, so a budget phone is the way to go. The Samsung Galaxy A02s, or M02s in certain markets, is one such device, and like all budget phones, there are compromises to be had. Still, when you add everything up and take the price into consideration, is this phone a good buy? I'm Angie for GSM Marina, and this is our review of the Samsung Galaxy A02s. Now, the A02s has a bit of a confusing name situation. But if you remember only one thing, you should know that the S differentiates this phone from its even lower spec A02 and M02 siblings. Semantics aside, this phone has a standard and clean design for its class. Ours has a blue paint job with differently shaded rhombuses on the back. It's a unibody plastic panel, which makes sense for the price. It's very similar to the Galaxy A12, but the texture is nicer. Even though it's plastic at 196 grams, this phone isn't exactly light. It's understandable with the battery size though. The camera island lies almost completely flat, unlike many other Galaxies, which means this phone won't be very wobbly on flat surfaces. The buttons are a bit mushy, and while it's not a deal breaker, the experience is notably unpleasant. There's no fingerprint sensor here as it's an entry-level device, but you can use the selfie camera for face unlocking. It works quickly and reliably, though it's not the most secure option out there. The A02s has some pretty thick bezels and an even thicker chin. This is far from surprising considering it's a budget phone. As for the display itself, it's a 6.5-inch PLS LCD with a 720p resolution. That means it doesn't have a particularly high pixel density at 270 ppi, but it also means that the screen draws less power. The LCD has a max brightness of around 400 nits, which isn't too bad. The contrast ratio was excellent, especially compared to the Galaxy A12. On the audio side of things, you'll find a headphone jack at the bottom. You also get FM radio if you're using wired headphones. There's a single downward-facing speaker which had average loudness, a touch louder than the Galaxy A12, but unimpressive overall. If there's a standout feature on this phone, it's definitely the battery life. Thanks to the 5000 mAh battery, the A02s got 114 hours of endurance on our tests, though it's a bit behind the Galaxy A12, which has the same battery capacity and screen size, but a different chipset. The phone ships with a 15-watt fast charger, and it gets from flat to 30% in half an hour. It needs around 2.5 hours for a full charge. Still, that's much faster than the Galaxy A12's 3-hour charging time. The A02s relies on the Snapdragon 450 chipset and either 3 or 4 gigs of RAM. This is a chipset that's been around since 2017, and honestly, it shows. This phone is significantly slower than its competition, which sport more powerful chipsets for the same money. Oddly enough, the phone was less prone to stutters than the A12, however. The Galaxy A02s runs Android 10 with One UI 2.5 on top. We're hoping that it'll get Android 11 eventually, though this device isn't exactly the highest priority for Samsung. What is promising is that this phone will get 4 years of security updates. Other than that, you'll be pleased to know that One UI 2.5 is very consistent from phone to phone, so what you find here won't be so different from what you see on other Galaxies. You have the same in-house gallery app, file manager, Samsung browser, gesture navigation, as well as a system-wide dark mode. The A02s has a triple camera setup consisting of a 13-megapixel main camera, a 2-megapixel macro shooter, and a 2-megapixel depth sensor. In comparison, the A12 has a larger 48-megapixel quad-Bayer main snapper, but if there's any difference in image quality, it's not in daylight photos. During the day, photos were sharp and detailed, and were definitely good enough for the class. There's some grain in uniform areas, but we've seen noisier images from more expensive phones. What's more unpleasant is that colors have a greenish hue and dynamic range is limited. There's no telecamera, but it takes decently zoomed in shots, and it's definitely better than the A12s. Portraits taken in live focus mode are nicely done, and subject detection is consistently good overall. There's no HDR here, however, so highlights will be blown out in backlit scenes. You should also know that live focus handles non-human subjects quite well too. The macro camera takes unimpressive shots. They're not very detailed because of the low resolution, and the fixed focus is limiting. At night is where the entry-level nature of the main camera really shows through. Images have a very narrow dynamic range, underexposed shadows, and blown out highlights. The detail in dark areas is particularly mushy. In better lit areas, images are usable. It's a bit of a shame that this phone doesn't include a night mode because it would really have benefited from it. The selfie camera isn't particularly impressive either. Images are soft and have little detail even when we disable all the skin softening. Noise was plentiful too. Colors could be more saturated, but the dynamic range was good. Still, you should tap on your face for proper exposure in backlit scenes. The A02s maxes out at 1080p at 30 FPS, and there is no stabilization to speak of. Footage was sharper and had more detail than the A12, but you'll still find a greenish tint and a limited dynamic range. If you're dead set on a Galaxy phone and you really can't stray from the budget segment, then it's between this phone and the Galaxy A12. Of the two, the A12 is better overall. But if you're looking for the cheapest Galaxy phone around, well, this one is okay. If brand loyalty isn't that important to you though, then you have a lot more options. There's Motorola's G9 Play, the Redmi 9, or even the Realme 7i. These phones have faster chipsets, and some even offer 4K video capture. Some might be a little more expensive, but it actually might be worth it over the headaches that come with slower chipsets. And there's also future-proofing to consider. So take your pick wisely. Thank you for watching everyone, stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time.